Hello, everybody. My name's Alfie White from XpressionFM down in Exeter, interviewing Mike, Joe, and Louis from the band Himalayas for the Student Music Network. So first of all, how are you guys? What have you been up to today?
Hey,
Yeah,
we're
thanks,
good, thank
Alan.
you. Yeah, we're just at our studio area. Just sort of sorting
Mhm.
things out, but we go until tomorrow, so just sorting everything out really.
Oh, that's massive then. What have you been doing to prepare for that?
Um, it's just a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of
Yeah.
like making sure
Yeah,
we practice and make sure we're practicing ready.
yeah,
And yeah, just sorting out general stuff.
Yeah,
really.
making sure we got clean socks and pants.
yeah. Yeah, all the necessaries then, definitely.
Not clean
Um,
pants, not socks yet.
Yeah. We're gonna share a couple of pairs and see how we
Oh,
go.
lovely, lovely. That's what we love to hear. So obviously this is a big moment then for you lot. What's been driving you to keep going? What's kept pushing you before this tour? What's been motivating you?
I think just the fact that we love it. I think we just generally love playing live. We just love playing shows, and we just really like making music. So this is ideal for us. You know, like I
Yeah,
think
perfect.
for ages, obviously with COVID and stuff, we weren't allowed to play, and like the shows weren't as happening. So yeah, it's just good to be back doing it. Like we're just really super grateful, and we can't wait to meet everyone and play shows and for everyone to be sweaty
Yeah, like
and move in and stuff like that.
Yeah, like when you make music, like the thing you want to do is play it live. So
Yeah, exactly.
that's really like, yeah, we just can't wait.
Yeah, no, that will be so exciting for you all. Really excited for you as well. So I kind of want to jump in and say, so without like tacking you to a genre too quickly, I want to know why rock was the sound that became your own. Where did that start for you in the life of the band?
I think for us, me and Mike were just always like when we started the band in high school. So like we're not this particular name or version of it, but we've been playing covers and stuff since school. And I think me and Mike, we were like the people in school that like rock music. It was a natural draw. I think both of us love rock music, and I think for the guys, for James and Louis, it was the same sort of thing. You know, just there's a natural,
definitely for me.
When James came in as well, kind of when we were starting Himalayas, like he's got like a big sort of foundation in rock drumming and stuff like that as well. So I think he kind of informed a lot of that as well. I think maybe the heaviness side of it wasn't as much of a concern before, and then it has been to some extent almost subconscious development, and then we kind of realized what we were doing and decided that we liked it and to sort of develop it and hone it a little bit more then.
Yeah. So did it kind of start both as technically this is what you could play it all well, this is what you were trying to play, but also that was what you felt drawn to in terms of the music you wanted to play, and did those kind of come together? That's what it sounds like here.
I think for me as well, we were like just we had a guitar like lesson, like I say lessons. Me and Mike, we had this guy in school. We didn't ever learn to play guitar really with him, did we? It was just more. He was like a really cool guy, and he was just like his influences of taste and music. We had discussions about music instead of learning to play.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. It was just like,
yeah. I mean, he was still kind of teaching us guitar, but it wasn't sort of like you turn up and he puts some sheet music in front of you and tells you what to do. It was more, what would you like to learn this week? And sometimes it would just be you'd talk and jam for half an hour, and that would be enough. And that was kind of more valuable than just being sat in front of a piece of paper trying to play it over and over again.
I think for both of us in particular as well, I think we wanted to play the music we loved. Like we just wanted to play the music, the bands that we were loving at the time. So like, I remember even before I played guitar, like this is early 2000s, and I'm listening to like the Black Parade and things like that, and I remember thinking that those were albums or even songs and stuff that I wanted to be able to play, or wanted to be able the band to be like something similar. And then I think the more we've gotten older, the more we still want to do that. People still put out music now, and we're like, yeah, we want to do that, or we want to do something.
Yeah.
So when you were learning, it was all about kind of jamming and experimentation. Is that something that you've continued in your songwriting and maybe in your performing as well?
Well, I think because of COVID, we had a lot of time. It was mainly kind of Joe and I just sat in our respective homes writing songs. So in the past, we've written some songs in a more of a jam way. Someone just comes in with a riff, and then eventually we all play it enough that there's a structure for a song, and then Joe and I might put some words on it or something. But especially over COVID, we didn't really have that luxury. It was more a case of just, when we do go into a room together, eventually we're going to have a few songs there. And I think maybe I think we probably learned a lot more about songwriting and grew to love it in a different way because of that, because it was sort of an experience we've had separately to how we've done things before. There was always still the element of, one of us writing a song and bringing it in or whatever. But it is that perspective on songwriting. I think doing it in different ways, to be honest, is ultimately going to be more valuable. If you've only got one way of writing a song, you're just going to keep writing the same song. So I think having a mix is the best way, really. But I think maybe going forward, like, we'd probably like to try it a little bit more like that, but the circumstances didn't really allow for it this time around.
I'm kind of talking about that difference. A band sound will always kind of be changing, and especially as we approach this, the big debut album. So while similar in sound, I think tonally your music has taken a turn towards a place of kind of grander narratives recently. Is the promise of a transforming sound something you've been actively integrating into your music? Or
I think so. I think so. Like, I think I think some of the stuff on the album as well, it just sounds, I think there are steps, and I think there are just like steps from these songs that we've released in the last two singles, and to the place that we're going to end up when the album comes out. I think there's I suppose this is like a dip in the toe in the water. Like, this is the just a taste of what's to come, I guess. And things get bigger and more expressive, I guess.
Well, I think the sound we've developed so far is kind of, it gives us enough room to move around within it that the album, the way that's kind of come to be, it's not like the same song 10 times or anything like that. It all sounds very much like the same band with the same elements, but we're willing to do different things and to try different things, and we all like a lot of different music, so we're all going to look for different things in music as well. So I think that's always going to maybe encourage us to make it a bit more interesting than just writing 10 standard rock songs and expecting the complete package. We're not really interested in that. I think it's more a case of we know what we do now, how can we expand that and develop it.
Okay, so it's sounding like you're kind of crafting individual songs very purposefully. You're not there to make kind of a generic overarching sound. You're there to build things that work as standalone pieces, not just as something larger.
I think as well, like with the way people listen to music these days, as well with like playlists, as opposed to the whole album thing, we didn't want to adhere to that too much. But I think for us, we just wanted things to sound great on their own, because every song is going to be a song, and people may dip in and out, I guess, like with the way that people are now, especially these days. But I think for us, we wanted to make an album that still made a huge amount of sense when you listen to it as one piece.
Just one cohesive piece that could be listened to start to finish, and as Joe said, make sense and feel satisfying to listen to as one thing. But as I say, we appreciate the fact that not everyone listens to music like that anymore. So it is about giving each song as much care and attention as you can as well, and bringing it all together then.
Yeah. Well, personally, how do you feel about the way people now consume music? This kind of like fragmented approach that we see quite often.
I mean, you can't really tell other people. Like, that's the thing. It's hard to say how other people should, enjoy these things at the end of the day. I mean, you can make a broader comment about how sort of quick everything's moving, and how one thing that's important one day is probably not going to be important in 2 hours time. But I think it is up to the individual listener at the end of the day. All we want to do is reach people with the music, and hopefully if they get an awful lot out of one song, then we've done our job. If they get an awful lot out of the whole album, then even better. We would prefer them to obviously listen to the whole thing, because we've put, as we say, as much time and effort into every song, making it one complete piece. But it's just not how it works at the moment. So we do understand, some people are probably only going to like maybe 1, 2, 3 songs. But as long as they do, then as I say, we've done what we set out to, really.
I think for me, like, we've just, I don't know. I like to listen to something the way that someone intended it to be. So, like, that's me personally.
We're music fans before anything else, and that's how we consume music. But
in the
not
reverse,
everyone's a nerd like us.
In the reverse, there's just like there's I think I wouldn't love to say that there's something for everyone on this album. I think we've come up with a sound that's like, I don't want to be too broad and say like, oh, we've got like a 20-minute ballad. If you're looking for Lewis Capaldi, you're probably in the wrong place.
Yeah.
But like, if you like rock music, or you like Arctic Monkeys or bands Queens of Stone Age and stuff, then you're 100% in the right place. But then you may have some crossover. If you like Lewis Capaldi, maybe there's something in there for you somewhere.
Yeah. But just kind of sound seems to be a word that's coming up a lot in the interview. And I was kind of listening to some old tracks, and If I Tell You is one that has always stood out to me. And that's a track that people I know have read it as drawing from the philosophy of like situationist movement and Guy Debord's theories found in Society of the Spectacle. Whether or not that is true is kind of above me, but how does music work for you as a vehicle to promote like a strong, well-informed message? Is that something you aim to achieve?
Well, actually, the Guy Debord Society of the Spectacle was a genuine influence on the lyrics.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
Really nice that you mentioned it. It's quite satisfying. Yeah, I was actually thinking about that book earlier. I haven't read it for years, and yeah, I think I need to give it another read. I mean, I think in terms of because a lot of the earlier singles we did were a bit more political, and I get into a lot more. And I don't think we've necessarily shifted in our views, but I think at the moment we don't feel like we're the people to be the ones trying to say things about that. There's so much confusion, there's so much going on at the moment that I think if we just came out and said, we believe this, that, and the other, we're just going to get lost among all the other voices that are trying to say something and not getting listened to. And I think
also, it's, if you don't mind me interrupting there and going, it's also because like the sorts of issues that everyone seems to be sort of clamoring around in terms of like messages to release in songs and stuff like that, are very specific, and it makes it. Like, I think for us, like I guess our vision for the music is to be sort of as long lasting as possible, and therefore the actual messages within a lot of the songs have to be a bit more broad in terms of like the scope of interpretation, rather than very specific, this is what we believe. Like I don't know if you guys agree with that. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it just goes back to that. I think at the moment it's just unhelpful to try and tell think
it's almost as if everyone has something to say, then nobody has anything to say. This is
that's it. Yeah, and I think as you get older as well, you realize that you just don't know enough about it to have. You can hold your views and you can have your opinions, but if you're not an authority on it, then it is quite tough to just go out and say everyone that listens to our music should feel a particular way. That's really what we're about. And I think those things will probably still come into the lyrics in different ways and have done on the album, but we're a lot more concerned about the ambiguity of it and the uncertainty.
Yeah,
and that reflects the world we're living in.
I think we
just you should believe this, that, and the other.
We used to have a tussle between the idea of like that kind of stuff, like the I suppose political like idea, and also like self-criticism. And I think maybe self-criticism won in terms of like our own lyrics now. Like I think it's just I think for a lot of it, it's just like holding ourselves to account, accountability on everything. First and foremost, before anything else.
Yeah, you don't want to be preaching from a place that is unwarranted. So, well, let's talk about the new single, Out of the Dark and Into the Light, which also includes the track Alone, and grapples with, I think, especially lyrically, some very lofty ideas of morality, good, evil, light, and dark. Where did that emerge from when you were writing?
I think we've always like sort of had that like that narrative, that arc of narrative in like our lyrics. I think like with Thank God I'm Not You, I think that was the main drive for me. And then this is the same sort of thing. I think just the fact of like wanting to be better and wanting for something better. I think that was a huge part of Out of the Dark and Into the Light, and Alone in a sense was the same thing. I think for me, Alone always felt like this like corridor, this never ending looping corridor to me of like just searching for something. And I think then Out of the Dark and Into the Light was like one of the first ones we came to during lockdown. It was one of the first ones written during that period of time. And I think that was like, like a searching for something better, and just generally wanting yourself to be better, because I think there's some lyrics in there, like you say, like the search for the darkness of your own self, I suppose.
So what does that kind of searching you're talking about, what does that aspire to? At what point does that searching stop for you as a band?
I don't think it does.
It
I think that's
never
kind of the
really
point,
does stop.
really.
Yeah.
And that to some extent is very exciting because you
Yeah.
never know what to find, really.
I think like what's quite imperative for us is like as a band, we've always looked forward. It's always been like we've never necessarily taken like a stop and stock of what we've done, and we're always looking at like, right, okay, that's done, now what's the next thing? And like because of that, there's always this sort of drive to try and improve, to try and like, okay, how like what was bad about that so that we can make it better next time, and or like, you know, okay, we're onto a new thing, like we want it to be this new thing sort of thing. And it's, you know, there's always that drive forward, and like the guy said, with that comes this sort of never-ending sort of want to do better. It doesn't stop and shouldn't really stop, because when it does, you kind of go, well, we're done now. And it's like, you know, and I don't think any of us really ever want to be done with.
And it's always, you know, it's great to just have things to look forward to and aspire to. I think if you're at a point where you're not looking forward to things, then it seems like a pretty sad place to be honest. No matter how you get or how popular you are, I think unless you've still got goals ahead of you, then what's the point, really? The best thing is to have a goal and then to achieve it, I suppose.
That kind of leads quite well into my next question, which was, I read that Dave Sardy helped him mix the track Alone. His previous work was with the likes of like Rage Against the Machine, Royal Blood, huge rock bands. And had me considering to what extent in your new tracks are you paying homage to the predecessors of rock, and is homage like an integral part of your music, or one that you think manifests of its own accord?
I think it manifests for us. I think we didn't actively try to sound so much like a particular band. I think there's certain bands that we can't sort of help, I suppose, sounding like a touch like the bands like Monkeys and Queens of Stone Age and Royal Blood and bands like that. But then also, you know, Foo Fighters and other bands. But yeah, like, I mean, Dave Sardy's worked on so many great rock records, and it's a privilege to be in the lineage of bands, I suppose, in his work. So yeah, I think, but you know, we haven't actively tried to be anything else, but we're going to sound like something else, because you can't change a wheel that much.
I think what's interesting, and like in conversations with Dave Sardy, like I may be wrong, but I don't think we ever really discussed other bands.
No, we did.
You did for a little bit, like, but it was kind of
a couple of mentions, so it wasn't really kind of
we want it to sound like this.
Yeah,
it was always like
albums and saying we want it to sound like this one or anything.
I think we just kind of told. I think like we did with we worked with a producer called Stephen Pringle, and I think the way we've always gone about it is been quite open to sounds and the way things, a description of them. So I think when we just said, oh, we want this to sound like a motorbike, like the engine of a motorbike, that's what we got, you know, like it was like that kind of thing. We wanted some warmth to it, so we described like something else, and I think that's the same sort of thing we did early on with Sardy. I think some of the calls were pretty spectacular, and I think he got us pretty straight away.
Yeah, I think he understood that sometimes you've almost got, as Joe says, almost like a visual element of you know, what you have an idea in your mind as opposed to a specific sound for what something should sound like.
Yeah, trying to sort of linguistically describe a tone. It's quite hard.
So a lot of those conversations kind of less about, oh, we want it to sound like this band or like this very, very kind of specific pattern of sound. We want it to have this affect more than anything. Or this kind of like visual image that you're creating. You're then kind of trying to translate that into the sound.
Yeah, definitely. I think with Sardi as well, we had done, I suppose he was a lot of it was mixing. So I suppose he's a master at that, and everyone within the industry thinks he is as well. So I think it's just like we kind of gave him the tools, I suppose, to of the sounds and exactly what we had recorded, and then he goes away and puts that together as more of a cohesive map, I guess. But which he needs no help doing, because
like sorry.
And kind of moving on, as younger members of the scene that rock encompasses, do you feel a pressure to be constantly redefining such a massive genre? And if so, how does that make you feel as a band?
Yeah, I think it's best not to care too much about stuff like that. And I know that sounds a bit sort of, whatever, but like it doesn't really matter. We love doing what we're doing. We feel that there's a progression and some substance in it, and a way forward. We're not trying to be the next Led Zeppelin or the next AC/DC. We're just trying to be Himalayas. And with any other music, it's grounded in the things that have come before it. I think rock occasionally gets a bit of a hard time, specifically on that front. But again, it is a genre that has been stagnant in the past, so we kind of understand where that kind of feeling of
revitalization, I guess.
You're the ones who are going to sort of make it sound.
I think for me, I live in this blissful ignorance of the fact that it doesn't feel like grand, like it doesn't feel like we're just like some guys who are making music and that's it. And I think there is something naturally coming about. I think anyway, I feel that anyway in the UK in particular. Where there just seems to be more bands coming about now, and there seems to be more of like a movement, I guess, coming back. Because like I just remember growing up and listening to bands, and it felt like rock was a huge deal. And I think that
that's the thing.
It feels like maybe it's coming back, and we don't really look too far into that. But I think if it does, then that'd be.
See, I think a lot. Also, I still listen to pretty much all rock. And so for me, rock never really went away. So it's not really about revitalizing or like changing the landscape of rock. It's like we're just playing music that we genuinely love and genuinely want to play, and that's sort of like where I think that sort of revitalization comes from, because when we're looking at a song, we're going like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Or wouldn't what would it sound like if we tried it this way, sort of thing.
You've got something to say, and then you listen to whoever and think, well, that element of that music could be a good way of communicating what we're trying to say, and then you kind of incorporate it. But yeah, I think it's necessarily going to be fresh, as long as you're not trying to replicate another artist.
I think as well,
it doesn't matter
because I think
it's your thing.
Like if the goal is outwardly to try and like change rock, for instance, then that's all you're going to really try and do, is to continually change rock in X or
I think
Y.
as well, technology changes massively. Because I think like even without thinking about it, like we were talking earlier today. And it's like, even though maybe we've not used any specific, like we're not using like MIDI or really, we're recording everything like old school and as audio. And like, I mean, we're not really doing anything necessarily groundbreaking in that sense, but we've got pedals that are state of the art and brand new, and things that like people years ago wouldn't have had in terms of the genre. And I think also as well, in terms of like mixing and where that is, like Dave Sardi's like a huge pioneer in the Dolby Atmos side of things. So we had some of the album has already come back and is mixed as Dolby Atmos. So like, I mean, that's a huge deal for us. So I think that feels fairly fresh, and like we're super lucky to have had that.
Yeah. That's amazing. So it sounds like it's a lot less about looking out and seeing what other people are doing, other bands, and kind of having a lot more self-reflection. That's what it's sounding like to me. It sounded like a concept.
I mean, you can still listen to other music and enjoy it, and
of course,
because that's the enjoyment, that's the sort of passion side of things. That's what kind of got us into it. But like when you're sort of, I guess, when you're looking at your own stuff, you can't. I don't know. I think it's probably wrong to continually looking like, how does this break the boundaries? Like, no, is it a good song to begin with? Like, does it work? Is it, and then you can add things and change it how you want. But
that's the thing. You can bring those more interesting ideas and elements into it, but they've got to work. And we'll find your own way of making them work. But you don't. I don't think it's something that needs to be forced. We know that we're still learning and progressing. So, how we sound in 10 years is probably going to be different to how we sound now. But, we're not kind of striving towards that. We're just sort of letting everything happen and developing in the way we develop. If you're chasing something, then, it's quite intangible at the moment. We don't know what that's going to be like. So it'd be silly for us to pull all our hope into it. When, it's more just sort of being along for the ride, I suppose, and taking in everything you can on the way.
So kind of coming back to the new tracks, you've talked a lot about like this sense of ambiguity in them, and I want to know where this kind of more undefined, perhaps grey area, where did that come from when you were beginning writing the new songs?
I think it is a big part of just the state of the world at the moment. There's just so much going on that's so
polarizing,
yeah. Confusing, and
but I think
there's been a lot of upheaval in a lot of different directions the last few years, and I think that's just kind of ended up reflecting itself. And you know, even now, like you don't know what the next 6 months is going to look like. You don't know what the next 5 years is going to look like.
I think for me and you,
we're constantly hanging over everyone. I feel.
I think for me and Mike, we write in very different, completely different ways. So like lyrically, and in terms of like the perspective of like a lyric, because I think that's where the grey area may be born. Because I think for myself, a lot of the time there'll be like personal elements or personal aspects to the lyric, and then be drawn in by like, you know, like the whole David Bowie thing where you just chop up lyrics and move them around and make a new.
Did he used to throw them into a hat? And then
I used to like rejig them. There's almost that, because I think some things like I like to twist and make them so then they're not quite as nice as they once were. And that's my inner sociopath. And then for Mike, like Michael perceives like the greater out like being of it. So like, you know, like something he likes to put a perspective of like someone else's perspective and someone else's shoes a lot of the time, right? And so I think sometimes when we marry that together, I think that's where the grey area is probably formed.
Okay, perfect. And kind of again, just to kind of start bringing the interview to a close, I know you spotted the Manic Street Preachers relatively recently at the end of 2021. I won't ask, because I imagine that was probably an incredible experience. I want to know a little bit about that relationship between a younger band, bearing in mind what you were talking about earlier, and a band that is very well established and has a fan base that will, you know, probably continue to well after that the Manic Street Preachers are gone. How did that relationship work? Was it one of kind of symbiosis, a kind of constant giving, taking, sharing relationship, or was it something a bit different? And how did you find that when you played those dates with them?
They were just super nice guys.
Yeah, that was really lovely. Really nice, like, people, really welcoming.
We just you can't fault it. I think they're just really nice people, and their
fans are great. Their fans tend to be, you know, just nice people who really like music. So when we played in front of them, they were very receptive, very welcoming. Like, you didn't feel like you had to proper work it.
It's always
they just wanted to listen to music, and
it's always the fear of a support band of coming up and no one being in the crowd. And like, what's really nice to see with a lot of the Manic fans is that
it was full.
Like
onto the stage,
and the Fandango one. Like it's one of those ones where like, but both times we turned out and it was a packed house for a support band. And like, you know, if that sort of doesn't give you an indicator of what kind of fans they are, they just love music. And it's like, you turn up and just,
I think in terms of band relation, like dynamic and stuff, I think they were just super welcoming. The thing is as well is like, I think for us, it's always a privilege to support a band who like you idolized and coming through the ranks. And I think for us, like in particular, like Manic Street Preachers and Stereophonics being Welsh bands, they were like it
was just a big
deal. Just a huge deal, and it still is a huge deal to us. So like, I'm still really, really grateful, and pinching myself. We've kind of done some of this. So, like, I'm super, super grateful, and I think that we're still grateful, and we see them from time to time. So it's nice when we do.
Amazing. So without making any too many concrete predictions, where do you see yourself in a couple of years? What is your trajectory? And what is kind of going to motivate you to reaching that specific point, that searching you were talking about?
I think for me, it would just be like I think I'm looking not too far past the first album, only because like, I think I just try and rein it in a touch, because otherwise my brain would go to world domination and stuff. Just the first album for me is like, we're ready and in the bag, and everyone's super excited about it. And I think shows are huge for us. I think that's the big thing for me, is like Europe and US and more bigger UK shows.
More bigger shows.
I think really the dream is to support some big bands in stadiums and things like that. But hey, who are we to say? I want to be doing that interview, you know, that Paul Rudd interview. Hey, look at us. Who'd have thought it?
Okay, so the dream is to get on Hot Ones. Is that basically it?
Yeah.
Nice
Like
one.
more rubbish with spices. So actually,
Yeah, maybe don't then. Oh, but no, perfect. Cheers, lads. It's been a great interview. Thank you very much. And hopefully chat to you soon.
oh, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.